Mining's just like any other job.
She seemed pretty confident this was just going to be my everyday, normal, ordinary mining gig. But she forgot to take into consideration the floaty space rocks, the artifact, the vision, Barrett, all of these guys, all of those guys, all of those guys, and of course, we can't forget those guys. But I can't say it's all bad. I've got my own ship now. It's pretty nice. And a friend robot. I think he's a friend. But because I touched the rock and I saw some stuff, Barrett gave me the ship and said, go talk to Constellation. And I guess he wasn't talking about stars. But the Crimson Fleet were unhappy that I got away. Apparently they wanted my ship. So, well, Barrett's ship, but it's mine now. But so I gave him hell. And then we went to make sure that they knew who was in charge and not to mess with me again. Their captain was held up on this abandoned facility, and so like a good murder captain I am, I made easy work of everyone that worked for him. I did some hacking, talked with the big cheese, and I guess they thought,
that Constellation keeps treasure hidden in the cargo bays.
Yeah, I told them they were wrong, but
I've heard enough out of you.
So we dealt with it the good old-fashioned way. From there, we arrived on this big planet, but before meeting Constellation, I thought I'd decorate my ship, you know, make it a little bit more homey, seeing as how it's mine now. And I spent a long time decorating it, and then I discovered there's a ship mechanic. I added some new things, which... boy, did this thing look cool. And then I went back inside to add some new stuff to the new places, and then I realized that my 2 hours of decorating were all gone. And so, yeah, that's pretty much garbage. I thought the planet looked pretty cool at first, but the more I walked around, the more it felt pretty empty for a future space city station. But I'll tell you this, I wasn't sure what to expect when meeting Constellation. They all seemed pretty nice, but I was getting some pretty big red flags when it seemed like Barrett giving me the ship out of nowhere, and then me showing up here without him wasn't the craziest thing that he's done, and they were all okay with it. Well, kind of, mostly. They were, yeah. I'm here now.
This is just typical.
So we talked about the artifact, what I saw, then we watched as my artifact and the ones that they already had did a little bit of a dance party, and then they gave me a room. It was pretty nice, actually. And then I joined Constellation. I kind of had a choice. I didn't really have a choice. I kind of had a choice.
Well,
I'm with Constellation now. From there, Sarah and myself visited the city. We took a little selfie, played in the elevator, did some shopping, and we met Donna. Donna was also parched and really wanted a coffee. And I just wanted everywhere shopping. I couldn't remember where the coffee place was. This place is confusing, so Donna would have to wait. The first mission with Sarah was simple. Find Vanguard Mura, because we think he has an artifact on him. So we headed for Sidonia on Mars. But I parked a little farther away than I could have. Like any good RPG setting, we talked to the bartender. Great. Apparently he'd run his tab up and barkeep here wasn't sure if he'd be back to pay it. But thankfully I let Sarah do the talking because this guy's a cheapskate and I guess he went to Venus. I heard people complaining about the lack of job opportunities and curiosity got the better of me. So now here I am working for him to help out the little guys because he needs to increase quotas. But to be able to increase quotas, he needs new equipment. But to be able to get new equipment, he needs to increase quotas. So I collected a few extra rocks to be able to help him increase his quotas. It really seems like it's something he could have easily done himself. But now apparently he wants me to do something else on top of all of this, which involves me working as an assistant for this guy that works for Deimos so that I could work my way in to get him his equipment and be able to skip the quotas, and so we just got off the planet and went to Venus because that sounded like a lot of work. Arriving at Venus, we found some Varun zealots, I'm probably butchering that, so we snuck past them and went to a satellite beacon where we heard Marora, I don't even remember his name at this point, requesting for parts. God, every time I say the word requesting, it doesn't sound like a real word. Requesting. So we went to Nova Galactic Starboard. This was one of Earth's first space stations, used for making ships like the one I've got right now. And inside was a bloodbath. Ecliptic had made their way in and killed everybody, I guess, and they weren't happy to see me. The Ecliptic were once seen as very powerful military contractors, but lately they'd become more of killers for hire. And, well, not very good ones, because I fought through them pretty easily, and I found the slate of the Moara guy we were trying to fight. Moana? On Neptune, we found the guy's ship, but it had been hijacked by mercs. The same kind of guys we fought at the last station. So we disabled its thrusters, boarded it, and killed the Ecliptic. And we saved his butt. It turns out Moara had tried to sell the artifact, but scanners didn't really work well with it, and then people just thought the item was a hunk of metal, so he used it as a, can you believe it, a hood ornament. But thankfully, after what we did, he just let us take it. So back at the lodge, we added it to the collection, and from there, we had a few options. Go with Sam to get an artifact, meet Vladimir on the Eye, or check on Garrett, who's been radio silent. So we met Sam and his daughter, let them aboard, and tried desperately to find that coffee place. Oh my god, was this a pain in the butt. This city is horrible to find anything. We are in the future. How do we not have a map? Why do we have whatever this crap is? But hey, at least Mika seemed fun, so we brought her aboard. A few more additions to the ship later, and we were finally off to check on little baby Barrett Man, the boy who couldn't take care of himself. But,
It appears things have gone downhill since the last time you were here.
Lynn suggested that if we could get the comms back up and going, we might be able to find where the ship was going that took Barrett, because she did try to ping it with the transmission or something like that. I don't really know what that means. However, we found something even better. An emergency transmission from Baby Man himself and a bunch of whatever this is.
I'm attaching the interstellar coordinates to the metadata on the transmission.
And I don't blame her. Lynn wanted to leave the mining job behind, but she didn't have anything to fall back onto, so I offered her a job on my crew.
Works for me.
And then we set off for a party cruise.
Hey, friend, you want to come over? We've got plenty of drinks and food.
Turning off gravity in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Always a pleasure to roam these locations with lower gravity.
But we did get a lot of beer. And then we arrived at Hyperia. I don't know how we managed to do it, but Barrett crashed the ship right into the ground before it could land, and we found Heller just chilling there near its remains. After this one crashed, another Crimson Fleet ship came by, and, well, they took the Baby Man, but left Heller, because I guess Barrett did this whole Harrison Ford move of, I've got this kid, so that they wouldn't find Heller, who, you know, he was just chilling there, had nothing to do, so we let him join the crew. Side note, I think they were trying a little too hard to make this guy look cool, and, yeah, he's just kind of comes across over the top. Although I kind of like that about him. Ah, crap, it's working. From there, we got another emergency transmission, and we were off to Bessel 3. And then when exiting the menu, we got this.
I'm not sure how much longer our outpost can hold on. We don't have much time.
Dang it. Some research station had been attacked by spacers, and there were a lot of them. This battle lasted well into the night, the longest battle I'd ever seen in this game, and things were in worse shape once we got onto the inside. UC Marines, scientists, everyone dead. But hope did change when we found Private Mahoney. Okay, so Private Mahoney is a part of the Freestar Collective and told us that if it wasn't for the United Colony soldiers showing up, they'd all be dead. Which honestly came as a bit of a surprise, because if you'd been living under a rock and not quickly looked up the Wiki article, you wouldn't know that the UC and FC hate each other. And it started a long time ago. I guess some sort of war over a treaty violation. I don't know the specifics. But under normal conditions, they'd be at each other's throats. But for now, they're not. Murder hoboing our way further into the facility, we met Corporal Lizama, who gave me this key that would let me go further into the facility, so that I could save Sergeant Dasari.
How many more are there with your unit? You got sniper support or something?
Yeah, because sniper support's really gonna help on the interior of this building. From there, we fought a few more, and then everyone except the spacers and those that weren't already dead lived happily ever after. But only after I cleared out an overrun outpost. And then it was all over. But only after I took out a few more of their ships. And then it was over. Oh, come on. And then finally, after killing them, and then their reinforcements, it was over. In the end, I'm pretty sure those two were also flirting with each other. And then finally, after a much, much, much longer than expected detour, we arrived at Bessel.
Someone's gone and put an ostracized bounty on your head.
Sorry, Barrett. You're gonna have to wait a little longer.
Hello.
Hi. The outpost holding Barrett was a little more fortified than I thought it would be. But it wasn't long before we were inside and face to face with Barrett.
I wish I could say this is the first time this has happened with Barrett.
That would have been nice to know before taking the job. One more artifact down, and now we were off to the Eye to meet Vladimir.
Come to my farm. Urgent.
No, come on! I'm not doing another one of these right now. But if you're wondering why this doesn't look like a station that we're landing on, it's because I forgot to hit record until after I left the station. So we saw Vladimir, he's a pretty cool guy. We saw a station, don't worry, it looks like a station. And now we're on this planet to look for Andrea, who hadn't checked in a while. She was sent to this planet to find an artifact in an abandoned mine, but she seemed fine and in good health. So we pushed through some eclectic soldiers and returned home with another artifact in hand, as well as the second one, and added them to the collection. And the next we were off to Procyon 3, where we didn't find an artifact, and instead a temple with some strange gravity mini game that gave us this power. We have the Force now. And now we finally arrived at Akira, home of the cowboy. All we had to do was get some maps from the bank and then find the artifact. Easy peasy, right? A group from the Shaw gang tried to rob the bank, but clearly it didn't go so well for them. I offered to try and talk some sense into them, but that also didn't work out so well. And, well, the next best thing was to sneak in through the back and murder them all, only to find out that the maps we were looking for were gone. And this Jacob guy that took them was actually Sam's father. There was a lot of beef between Sam and his father from what I could pick up. Sam wanted to be free and live his own own life, while his father felt it was important they live up to the Solomon name. And Sam's father seemed to believe that Sam had no respect for it. And understandably, there was also a lot of tension about Jacob not getting to see his granddaughter. I wanted to press more, but I didn't feel it was my place. So I ended up talking some sense into the dad to get the maps, and then we got the heck out of there. Using the maps, we made our way to the empty nest. And, well, it had been taken over by the Shaw gang, the same people we just murdered. So we fought through more of them well into the night, until finally we could make our way in and recover the artifact. But on the way out, we found ourselves face to face with Shaw, leader of the Shaw gang. I tried to talk our way out of this, but apparently I'm not so good at it, and it all ended with...
Kill them!
In the end, we did a little looting and returned to the lodge with yet another artifact, and then traveled with the old man to my home city of Neon to sit down with a buyer interested in selling an artifact. I'll tell you though, the city hadn't changed a bit. Its main strip was still as bright as ever, and you could smell the corruption leaching off of every corner. But we weren't here for the good stuff, we were here for business. So we met Oscar at Shroud Eklund Corporation HQ, and this is where it all started to make sense. See, when Oscar was first introduced to me at the beginning, he was kind of the sugar daddy of the team, the man funding everything, the man with invincible pockets, the man with unending funds. And now I knew where he got all that money from, and on top of that, his partner in command of the company was also his wife. Although it's kind of vague if they're married or not. They could just be together, I don't know. But through her help, we got the money we needed for the buyer and some contingency plans in place. By this time, Sarah and myself have been traveling together for a long time, and I guess after seeing everything between Oscar and his lady, she decided to open up a little. I learned that before Constellation, she worked as head of the Navigator Corps for the UC for 8 years until the department was removed. She said it all got shut down because she spent more time exploring than discovering and sharing important things. So to the big business, her department didn't seem to be that useful. I guess Sarah felt that maybe she was spending too much time on the field and not enough time on her responsibilities with the organization. Up until now, I'd never asked her what was important to her, and I was always just dragging her along with me. A while back, she told me about her mentor and how important the mentor was to her, and when this was all said and done, Porima 2, the home of her mentor, was the first place we were gonna go to. But that's all she was willing to talk about at this point, which was probably a good thing. We were a bit on a time crunch. I needed to investigate the cellar and see how good security was in the venue we were going to be meeting. The seller himself was Seacard, and he wasn't well liked by the local shop owners in the area. And for a few credits, I learned where he lived, so of course, with a little bit of sneakery, it was easy to check out. And we learned there was a bit of heat that had fallen onto the artifact lately. So his plan was to sell it fast, which was good information to know. And then on the security side, we could have some extra security to back us up if there were any problems. And then on top of that, I did a little bit of hacking. And we had control over the doors, so if we wanted to, boom, doors shut, he couldn't get away. And from that, the meeting went off mostly well. The seller tried to get more money out of us, but in the end agreed to the original price. But where things fell apart was the heat on the artifact came from Slayton Aerospace. And yeah, the thug that came there demanding the artifact after we just purchased it was not open to discussion. But when talking was done, I don't think Sarah got the memo that it was a gunfight. Things went from bad to worse when we found out
your ship's been impounded at the spaceport.
Because now we had no choice but to go to Slayton Aerospace. But since this turd wouldn't see us, I decided to do a little bit of sneaking in. And again, nothing wanted to go, well, the easy route. With the help of Sugar Daddy's wife, we managed to sneak most of the way up, but we did encounter some security when we got outside. But Sugar Daddy and Businessman came to a business agreement, and they let us go. And then everything was back to perfectly normal with no problems at all, except this Starborn guy in a fancy ship showed up and he wanted the artifacts. So of course we said, "Nuh-uh," and he said, "Uh-huh," and we got into a bit of a fight. Their ship was pretty strange actually, but we took it down in the end. Or it jumped away, I'm not quite sure. But it was a close fight. Back at the lodge, we dropped off another artifact and discussed this Starborn guy and the weird characteristics of him, and who is he, where'd he come from, and all the other questions that go with it. But since we didn't know anything, we just decided to go look for more artifacts. Which took us up to an abandoned pharmaceuticals lab. And while the Ecliptics didn't want us around, it was Sarah that really hit the hardest here.
I wanted to talk to you, but honestly, I don't know where to begin.
She told me about how much the Starborn's existence had hit her, how exciting and terrifying it was, how much she wanted to learn about them. It also reminded me of our talk back on Neon. It had me thinking again about what was important to her. She was my closest friend out here, and I wanted to be there for her any way possible, whether it was continuing to explore with us or working on things that she felt she needed to back at the lodge. And no matter what she decided, I'd be there supporting her. Heading underground, we recovered another artifact and then battled some spacers in an abandoned maintenance bay because, I mean, hey, it was kind of on the way back, so I thought maybe we'd stop by and do another one. However, this time, a Starborn spawned right in out of nowhere, trying to stop us. Thankfully, it was no match for my incredible talent. And then we were back at Constellation, where we all had a little get-together to wind down and relax. But not for long, as we all went to the eye to help with some repairs since the station had been neglected due to necessity for some time now, I guess. I don't really understand how, Mr. Moneybags could have, you know what, it's fine. Once repairs were done, Vladimir sent Barrett and myself to meet with an old friend of Barrett's out on the scow. But Barrett didn't seem to be on too good of terms with them.
You dare show your face in my ship again?
Of course, everything went smoothly and there were no problems at all going through this, and then we were back at Constellation. But something was wrong.
Hello, Constellation. Are you there?
There wasn't much time to think. We had to decide between flying to the Eye and fighting off the Starborn there, or holding our ground here long enough to be able to pack up all the artifacts before the Starborn could get to them. As much as I wanted to go up there, I knew what I needed to do. So we hunkered down to give Noelle enough time to pack up the artifacts. From there, we escaped underground, where I managed to take out one of them, I'll add, and we ran through the city. It was not looking good. Exiting the atmosphere, we encountered another Starborn ship. God, no matter how many times we killed them, they just kept coming back. But for some reason, this one was different, and he let us go. Returning to the Eye, I thought we'd face another fight, but all we found was Sarah in a pool of her own blood. She was dead. Back at Constellation HQ, I did what I thought was best in the moment, and I know it's what she would have wanted me to do. But that didn't make this any easier, because I'll always wonder, could I have made it in time to save her? My biggest regret was we were supposed to go and see her mentor. But now she'll never get that chance. Constellation didn't feel comfortable holding onto the artifacts and gave them to me so that I could keep them safe. So I decided to leave them in an isolated area for the time being. A small outpost I'd been building up on a moon which Lynn and Heller volunteered to watch over. But I wasn't expecting what awaited back at New Atlantis. The spaceport was in complete disarray. Whatever attack they had launched on us, it must have continued even after we'd escaped. But at least the mass district looked mostly okay. I hoped we could touch base with Donna, but she was nowhere to be found. But since everything in the district was operating business as usual, I was sure she was fine. But I was pretty sure the lodge would be a different story. We all met back at the lodge now that things had quieted down. Mateo had some ideas on how we could move forward. The hunter had mentioned something about unity before disappearing, which was also something that the priest in Mateo's religion had talked about during his sermons. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe not. But it was all we had to move on right now. Barrett mentioned some investigating he wanted to do of his own, but this was something separate from Constellation. The last message he'd ever received from an old friend of his ended up having some encrypted parts to it. Barrett believed his friend might have secretly been trying to ask for help. All Barrett could decipher so far was something about a mining company, a court case, and that he'd been framed for something. So Barrett and myself parted ways for the time being so he could look into that matter, and then while Mateo looked into his priest, I took that opportunity to take some time for myself. I hadn't been alone since Sarah died, and it was time to take some me time. With the money I'd been saving, I purchased a new ship, and with my leftover funds, I got it a few upgrades. That way I could give Barrett back his old ship, but apparently he had no interest in all the stuff I'd collected. And yeah, this wasn't gonna fit into my ship. So I took everything out, sold as much as I could, and then I just tossed the rest on the floor, because it wasn't gonna do me any good sitting around in an inventory. Originally, I'd collected all of it so I could decorate my ship's interior, but every time I went to modify or upgrade it, I guess the workers just tossed everything into the cargo hold and replaced it with their own new stuff. It didn't really seem like that much, so I'm not really sure what Barrett's problem was. I decided to keep just the terrarium as a memento of everything that had gone on this last little while, but I guess at some point I had stolen it from somewhere. I spent the next couple of days flying around to some of the locations Sarah and myself had planned to go to. They were mostly anomaly areas we wanted to investigate, which most of them turned out to be temples, granting new abilities. I also had a run-in with some pirates, a weird gravitational anomaly, a 6th grade class, another Starborn, and then apparently I had an interview with Ryujin Tower for a job application that I don't remember applying for.
Her office is down the hallway to my left. Take another left at the conference room, follow it around to the right and up a small flight of stairs. Then take a left and keep heading that way until you see her office.
Yeah, I probably should have written that down.
I hope you're more prepared than the last one.
We'll see about that. I don't even remember applying for this.
There's a meeting starting soon, and I need you to pick up the coffee order at Terra Brew.
Oh, great. Now I'm a coffee delivery person.
Oh, the Ryujin order. You must be new. What happened to Tomo? Did he finally get that promotion?
I got fired is what happened.
Uh-oh. Timo shows up right as I'm about to grab the order.
They didn't even have the decency to tell me. They just had security escort me out of the building, like some criminal.
But then...
So I'm taking matters into my own hands. Believe me, it's either you or me.
I see. What does he know, and what shady business is going on behind the scenes here? This company not only is a bit bigger and has a lot more influence than I thought it did, but it's also clearly more dangerous than it seems. On my way back to Imogene, and on a whim, I talked to this guy on a bench. He gave me a lecture on not wasting his time, so I went to leave, and then he stopped me to see if I could help him deal with a minor indiscretion. Alright, apparently Rafik helps the impoverished by helping pay for things that they need, but he lost some documents and wants me to find them. Is this company just sketchy but in a weird way? But I guess Imogene already knew about what happened at the coffee shop, and
Congratulations, you've been promoted.
Immediately, I was brought into a meeting and introduced to some of the other big names here at the company. Lyndall is the man that pays me, and depending on how well the missions go, I may get paid more or less. Genevieve is in charge of all the public-facing parts of the company, so if I make a mess of missions, she tells me that it's going to make things very difficult for her and her department. Alexis is head of the legal department, and they will be dealing with all the troubles that I might cause with specific people or places, and also warned me that I should try to stay clear of law enforcement as much as possible. And then Camden, well, just works in the same department that I do, and apparently we're not going to be seeing each other much, but had some inspirational words of wisdom.
People in your position don't typically see the brighter side of Ryujin Industries. But rest assured, this is a great company, and the work we do goes toward benefiting millions.
On my first mission after the meeting, I made a mistake passing through the back streets because the store caught my attention, and I wanted to see what they were selling, which turns out it was actually a bar. They didn't have anything inside except for a backroom membership area where we could safely and legally enjoy the effects of Aurora. I'd never heard of this, although canonically I should know what it is because this is the city I grew up in. So I bought a membership, and it turns out they don't just let you use Aurora there, they also sell it there, but it's also a drug and illegal. But 140% slower time for 10 seconds? I had to try this. Oh my god, it was so cool. But I also now apparently have an addiction to stimulants. I couldn't find anything about it in the menus, so it's probably fine. The company Celtcorp and Ryujin Industries have been competing over a contract, and I guess Celtcorp tried to hack into Ryujin or something like that, and so now we're getting back at them by having me hack into their system and install a program. And I had the perfect plan that I needed for it. Go in, talk to the lady at the front desk, and then use my smooth talking to get info out of her before I sneak in and do the dirty deed. All I learned was that there's this guy that owed a large deal of money to Celtcorp. Well, I guess this is also important. She's the daughter of the owner. But she was really concerned about this guy because he was down on his luck and he was just a really nice guy, so I offered to help out. Plus, with getting on her good side, maybe she wouldn't care if I just snuck over into the back offices and, you know, uploaded the program. I also might have accidentally stumbled upon Chloe's diary. She's actually really into this guy, and that's why she wants to help him. Alright, now I definitely gotta help. I wonder if she knows about Celtcorp's underhanded tactics. So the dude's name was Sabro, and speaking with him, I get why Chloe spoke the way she did. He just radiated good energy. So I did what any mentally unstable and meddling person would do. I gave him the diary. Turns out he also really liked her too. And with that, I made my way back to Ryujin Industries. Oh, that's right, and right before I got my addiction, I was able to find Rafiq's documents that he was looking for in the underbelly. Imogen was pretty impressed with my first job. In and out without anyone knowing a thing. For my next mission, I was planting documents at Loretto Firearms, so that basically their deal would fall through that they were trying to set up with people, and then we could pick it up at Ryujin instead and make a lot of money. But it's not like we were forging documents against Loretto Firearms, we were just planting some to expose their own corruption that they already had, so that's fine, right? But no, Loretto Firearms wasn't just some firearms shop. Yeah, this was a firearms factory. I cased out the joint, they had a little bit of security, but nothing too crazy, and I decided to break in from the roof. And it ended up being the right call because it brought me right beside the room I needed. A little quick hack to get into the door, leave some documents in the chest, and I was in and out again before anyone even noticed. This next mission was a little bit more challenging. I had to steal a security key card from Hopetown, and I had just the idea how to do it. Just had to get my hands on a little uniform. This was my first time in Hopetown, so just in case things went south, I wanted to get myself accustomed to the area. First person I met was Adela, who called out to me as I walked past. I guess she just started a new job shipping resources, and one of her shipments got her into a lot of trouble with the Spacers, Rangers, and who knows what else. So she ditched the cargo and has been hiding out since. So she wants me to pretend to be her so I can deal with a bounty hunter that's come to collect the bounty on her head. I thought for sure this was going to end in bloodshed, but thankfully, I'm just too good at talking. Finding the security guard I needed didn't turn out as good as I thought it would.
You sure you belong here?
I don't know why I thought neon security guard armor was gonna help me in an entirely different city, but luckily they weren't too suspicious, and it didn't take much persuasion, just some persistence. For my next mission, sabotage a deal between Quantum Synergies and Infinity Limited, as well as, you know, how about a little Aurora? a little's not a problem, right? Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Zola was the first target to talk to, and I had to convince Zola that Infinity was not the company they wanted to work for. And thanks to the dossier from Imogen, Zola was pretty easy to persuade. All it took were a few comments on Infinity's unreliability and cheap status, and she had no interest on them. From there, I went up to the VIP suites where I found Arthur, the second target from Quantum Synergies, and they were another easy convince. A few comments on their lack of profits and the difference between Ryujin and Infinity's profits per quality. Wow. He was also starting to reconsider. And to top it all off, the little swap of the presentation, and I was on my way out of there. Ryujin just couldn't get enough of me. So they sent me off on another mission. Hope Tech had been using some pretty underhanded tactics towards our company, so the plan was to set things straight and remind them who was in charge. All I had to do was sneak in, plant an arc device, Easy in, easy out. I just waltzed right in, stole a uniform, this time from the proper location, and snuck around onto the top of the ship, and then realized that I needed to be inside the ship. Yeah, the whole plan almost went up in flames when a guard walked in right as I planted the device.
Hello.
But somehow it all worked out in the end. I don't know if he was on my side or if he was just stupid. Or maybe I'm just that talented. I guess this Trident company had been stealing from us, so next it was off to return them a favor. I was to steal a schematic for their new engine prototype that just so happened to be in their luxury line's shipyard. The Staryard was pretty massive and full of a lot of people working and armed guards. That wasn't an issue. Some idiot left the schematic in a chest right beside the vent I was crawling through, so I was in and out before I even knew it. Ryujin Industries was so incredibly impressed with my work, they upgraded my security clearance. And then I was off for a meeting with Ulara Shen, Imogene's boss. Even with my convincing track record, Ulara wasn't too sure about me yet. So she sent me off to Sidonia to go meet with this guy named Simon, who apparently had some information on Infinity Limited. But when I got there, he wanted 10,000 credits or some help with a side mission. But I wasn't gonna pay 10,000 credits, so apparently this merc Malia has been after him for some time now, and he wants me to go deal with her. Honestly, I have a feeling he upped the price just so he could convince me to go and take her out for him instead of paying him for the information. The conflict between these two was a result of an old flame and Simon's betrayal. That sleazeball. He had sold her over to the UC, and understandably, she's been trying to make his life a living hell ever since. I was glad I could talk Malia into giving me her gun so that I could use it as proof of her death. And with seeing it, Simon gave me info on Stanley McMillan and told me about this Project Dominion, something Infinity Ltd has been working on, and apparently they don't want Ryujin to find out about it. So now all I had to do was wait till Stanley left his office and download Project Dominion. Easy in, easy out. And I even got to keep Ember. Turning over the data slate with the information I collected, it turns out that Project Dominion is actually one of our own prototypes, and somehow Infinity got their hands on it and was trying to sell it as one of their own projects, which could only mean one thing: there was a mole in the midst. And our plan to find it was to stage a routine maintenance so that while everyone was out of the building, I could sneak in and search for anything that might reveal the culprit. To prepare for this, I met with Nyx. He'd apparently made a program for me that I could run on Ularu's computer, although it seemed a little weird to be getting outside help for an inside Ryujin problem. But with the program in hand, this is where things could get very complicated if we screwed up. As part of the maintenance, only specific authorized personnel could be in the building, and I was not part of the list. To pull this off properly, nobody could know what I was doing or that I was even there. Any other way and the mole might get suspicious that we were onto them, which of course meant that the front entrance was not an option. I was gonna have to find another way in. There were a couple close calls on the way up to the office, but I kept pushing forward and might have accidentally looted a few things into my pocket along the way. And security was even tighter and tighter the further we made it in. And honestly, I don't know how I made it through some of those spots. But I eventually made it to the office, ran the program on Alura's computer, and used the vent system in her office to exit to the roof. Back at Nyx's, he did his work and prepared everything on a slate for Dalton, as well as he mentioned,
"It looks like fun times ahead for Ryujin."
But it wasn't my place to know. With Nyx's help, we learned that someone has been remotely accessing Lara's files. But the mole was Imogene, and that was someone I had an even harder time believing. But either way, now I had to escort her back to Dalton. But I learned from Yuko that coincidentally, Imogene hadn't been seen since the maintenance. And her last known location, Frankie's Grab and Go, which also happens to be a front for the Sioka Syndicate apparently. I also probably butchered that name. This is turning out to be a lot more complicated than we thought it was gonna be. There was no way for me to get into the hideout from the entrance of Grab and Go. So, with a little snooping around, I found a way in through the roof. Classic, right? Didn't see that one coming. Working my way through, I made it all the way to the back room where I expected to find Imogene being held. But that was far from the case, because there she was, perfectly safe, perfectly fine. Well, to a degree, she was stuck here. But apparently, Imogene claimed that Ulara had planted her as a double agent, expecting that Imogene would take the fall for Ulara's plan. We found out that Project Dominion isn't just some normal project. This is a neural amp that can directly take control of others, and Ularu is wanting to use this to gain more power. Well, apparently. Imogene suspects that Ularu had been using it on her for some time now to control and force her to leak the information, so that all the evidence of the mole and the leaks would point towards Imogene being the culprit. Well, especially since Imogene also is the only one with the skills in the company to pull something off like this. With the information I had, it was incredibly far-fetched, but there was no way Imogene was the bad guy here. Right? To prove her innocence, she gave me a slate and said that all I had to do was deliver this to Dalton because it had all the evidence that was needed to prove Imogene's innocence. But I was supposed to bring Imogene in with me, but I let her talk me out of it. I decided to just bring in the slate. I mean, if worse comes to worse, I could track down Imogene again, right? But with Dalton in possession of Imogene's slate, he was now compiling a report with his new information. and I was off to R&D to meet with Misako. Something to do with Infinity Ltd and their involvement with Project Dominion, because I was gonna have to infiltrate their facility. But before I could do that, they wanted to complete production on the Project Dominion neural link, which also happened to involve the completion of the shielding mod that protects the user from other people's mind control devices, which is good to know. However, the group responsible for delivering the required resources went silent. So now it was my job to recover the minerals and find out what happened. And like most of these missions, things didn't start out well when I landed down on the moon and it looked like a starboard had been following me. I only hoped I could wrap things up here before they caused any trouble. At first glance, the place seemed quiet, but eclectic mercenaries were here, and it had been a long time since I found myself in a serious gunfight. Which, I'll be honest, it was kind of nice to be back in one. While the mercenaries had made their way into the mine, there was no evidence of any survivors. Did they escape? Or were they being held elsewhere? That was until I found a contract on the body of what I believe was one of the captains here. The shipment of ore that was supposed to be delivered to Ryujin had been delivered to a station called the Clinic now instead, and the mercenaries here were told to leave no witnesses. So we know what happened to everybody. The Clinic was a facility designed to research, study, and cure strange and dangerous pathogens from around the universe. And security, understandably, was pretty tight, but thankfully, a little gullible. And as for the doctors, well, I just told them I was from Infinity, and they let me walk right out with the shipment. I guess they didn't want it here, it was getting in their way. It's strange to see how such a tiny package can cause so much trouble. Story of my sex life. Returning to Ryujin, I learned that, well, sneaking into the Syndicate's hideout brought on the ire of Administrator Bayu, because apparently the leader of this whole planet is also intertwined in with the Mafia, or Syndicate. Are Syndicates and Mafia the same thing? And the Ryujin company now owes him a debt that I must pay, which involves eliminating an operative for him. So I was off to New Homestead on Titan, one of Saturn's moons. From what I could see, this place was pretty much just a tourist trap with an old-timey feel. Well, that and it produced a lot of methane. And you'll never be able to guess who my target was. The guy I met at the coffee shop, who I also replaced at Ryujin Industries. Thankfully, neither of us wanted to have to kill anyone if we didn't have to. He said he had a place that he could disappear to, and for both his safety and mine, I hope he was right. Dalton had been reassessing all the information we'd collected over the last while, and it was now clear that Ularu was actually the mole within the company. But we needed proper evidence to prove it before we could take action. The start of the plan involved us going to a meeting where we discussed the mole, and we would just act as if we believed Imogene was the true culprit and carry on as usual. That way, Ularu might drop her guard, making my job of finding evidence against her a little easier. But I wasn't sure how I felt about the next part of the plan. In order to infiltrate Infinity Limited, they would implant the Neuralink and Shield mod into me. I'd be one of the first to take it for a spin, hopefully successfully. All right, here goes nothing. Waking up, I felt fine, so we jumped right into testing. DeMarcus volunteered as the test subject, and using the Nero app, I connected with him and had him grab a key and unlock his way out of the test room. And it was as if he had no idea what was happening. I could have made him do anything I wanted. In the wrong hands, this could be very dangerous. But now with the NeuroAmp working, the next step was to infiltrate Infinity Limited. I was to hack 2 computers with a program from Ularu and then steal the prototype and get out. But what Ularu didn't know was that she was giving us the last piece of the puzzle to prove what she had been doing. Because the slate that Ularu gave to me with the program to install into Infinity, I gave to Dalton, and he gave me a new one instead, with a different program that we intended to run. Ularu had hoped that with her program, she could plant information in Infinity Ltd's system that framed Misako as the one working with Infinity, as well as making out Mako to be the one that pushed Lucas Drexler into trying human testing. Oh yeah, this might be important. Back in the clinic, the reason why there was so much security blocking off the doctors on the other side was because they'd been secretly doing human testing to try and rush Dominion into a working state. And if Ularu's plan had worked and she was able to frame everybody that she needed to, Ularu would have become the new head of Ryujin Industries. So I was given the cover story of Skylar Lumen, and the mission was a go. I was able to use the NeuroAmp to get access to the executive offices and a meeting directly with Lucas, the guy whose computer we needed to run the program on. And yeah, there was definitely something off about him. And using the NeuroAmp again, I sped up the process significantly. I just had him let me install the program directly onto his computer without him even knowing it was going to ruin him. None of these people had any idea what was happening. Approaching the room where their prototype NeuroAmp was being held, I used one of the scientists to open the door for me, and once inside I disabled the alarm. But things got a little sweaty when I realized I'd only brought one digikey. So it was a one-chance opportunity to get this right. But thankfully, with the alarm down, I had the scientists close the shutters and then the prototype was mine. However, Faye's computer and getting out was a different story. Both exits were full of eyeballs with nowhere to hide, and the Euroamp didn't work on the guards stationed outside. Either they already had the shields installed, or I wasn't good enough with the amp yet to affect everybody. But I couldn't just stay here forever, because someone would find me eventually. So I took a chance and was immediately seen. Someone activated the alarm, and then I bolted for Faye's office, did what I needed to do, and I was at. Actually, I don't even remember why I went to Faye's office. Well, either way. Once the deed was done, the final step was to go with story and evidence in hand to SSNN. Because with a story like this, there's no way they wouldn't want to broadcast it. By the time I made it back to Ryujin Industries, the story was airing and Infinity Ltd was done. That was until Misako mentioned another part of the plan, which was buying Infinity. Which, hey, not a bad trade-off. Lose some competition, swoop in to save the employees so Ryujin looks good, and acquire Infinity's brightest and best. But I wasn't too sure about Misako's next step. I was supposed to convince the board that this was a good idea by using the Neuroamp. And again, with everything that I was able to do with it, this didn't seem right. This wasn't a board making decisions anymore. This is exactly what we set out to try and stop Ularu from doing. But going against her wishes, I just talked to everyone. I tried to convince them that we wanted Infinity and told them what I thought about the Neuroamp. I just hoped they'd see how bad it could be. It was pretty unanimous on acquiring Infinity. There were a few votes against it, but I had no idea how the Neuroamp would go. It seemed to be split pretty 50-50. During the meeting, Ularu thought her plan went off without a hitch, and she was ready to remove Misako as CEO. But with all of our work behind the scenes, well, Ularu was fired instead. I was a little disappointed because I thought Ularu was going to put up a bit more of a fight, and I was looking forward to seeing that, but I guess she was just so surprised and didn't see this coming that she was just dumbstruck. And there we go. Senior Operative. A nice little promotion to go along with everything else. Now you might be wondering what happened with the Neuroamp. In the end, I didn't really feel it was my place to make everybody's decisions for them, so I told them everything that I thought was bad about it, and I let them come up with a decision themselves, and they decided to keep moving forward with it. I touched base with Imogene before heading out, and also checked out my new office that came with Senior Operative, so that was pretty sweet. And I knew I wouldn't be back here for a while. As Senior Operative, I wasn't in direct contact with them anymore. They would just leave missions for me, and I'd pick them up as I wanted. Some time ago, Mateo sent word he was ready to talk with Keeper Aquila, and I'd been putting off responding to it, but I didn't have any more excuses to keep delaying things anymore. I know Sarah was gone, but I couldn't keep avoiding that place forever. Honestly, I thought Keeper Aquila was gonna be a creep, but instead he seemed kind of normal, and every word he spoke felt heavy with sincerity and wisdom. There was something naturally comforting about him, the perfect qualities for a cult leader. But when Mateus asked about Unity specifically, whether there was some secret meaning behind it, the Keeper led us inside to talk more privately. The true meaning of Unity. The Keeper told us a story of someone long ago who explored and walked all the settled systems. And the Keeper believed the story could be a clue left behind for us to find the Pilgrim again, and that something must be there at the Pilgrim's resting place. Mateo stayed behind to keep speaking with the Keeper, while I started seeking out the Veyrune at the House of Enlightenment. The Veyrune had something about the Pilgrim and their history or of religion, or whatever they would call it. I was hoping I could use the Veyrune's version of the story and the Keeper's version to kind of get a bigger whole picture of what was going on. All that I got out of her was that someone had fought with the Pilgrim 4 times, over 120 rotations of a planet. Which I'm sure a planet spinning around enough times would make sense to someone somewhere. Also, nobody had cleaned up the mess I left a while ago, oops. I had no idea this underground location existed in the city, but I was here to speak with the Enlightened, some people the Keeper suggested I should go check with as well. Thankfully, they were a little more cooperative. In their oldest records, it spoke of a drifter who would return every week asking the same questions. I don't really see how that's useful. I don't know how we did it, but meeting back up at the Keeper's place, we somehow came up with an idea of where to go next. Because through these clues, somehow they came up with a planet and the coordinates on it. And there she was. Man, I'd missed that ship. It was also really nice to catch back up with everyone. Cora had been getting into some reading, so I helped add to the book fund a little. Sam seemed pretty unhappy with my involvement with Ryujin Industries. Andrea was also on the same page, which I get. I still wonder at times too if letting them create it was the right decision. And then there was Barrett, and I knew he'd bring it up too. The one topic I'd been doing my best to avoid since it happened. I still wasn't quite ready to talk about it. First jump out, we found a ship under attack. Taking out the enemy vessel, communications opened up, and it seemed the people on the ship we protected knew me and were happy to see me. I don't remember them though. But that's because I'd never met them. The ship was a mess and they appeared to be Ryujin operatives. And they were transporting a rogue AI back to Ryujin when it killed their technician that was trying to install a circuit board on it. So of course they gave me the board to install it. Thanks guys, appreciate that. But snooping through the room, I found documents from other people talking about Juno, That's the name of the AI here. The entire situation around Juno was weird. Some of the most notable notes left behind mentioned a bunch of psychology pertaining to Juno, as well as that Juno had the capability to lie. Yeah, I don't know if I could just install the circuit board like that. I mean, is Juno alive? How does this work now? Speaking with it, Juno asked what it meant to be a good person, which I honestly didn't know the answer to that. I was still wrestling with a lot of my most recent decisions. I was a little worried about leaving Juno this way. Something about Juno screamed dangerous. And
Decision. Vent oxygen and disable life support. Well, that didn't work, did it?
Well, come back! Hey, get us off this...
Goodbye.
touching down on Indium 2, we set out for Pilgrim's Rest, which we were gonna have to make this a quick trip because the Starborn were following us again. I was pretty sure we were gonna find a small bundle of rocks and a plaque on it, or some sort of monument in the name of the Pilgrim, but not this. I was really worried the Pilgrim was just gonna turn out to be an origin story of some company, but the books of the Pilgrim had been scattered around the camp. He wrote of his love and compassion for those around him, but also of his frustrations with how they could not seem to truly understand the meaning behind unity. And in his final book, he wrote that if I was to truly understand, I would have to learn how it all had started. On Hylia 2, the island hides the scorpion, and the scorpion sting hides the truth. I didn't know exactly what he meant, but if I had to guess, it's that sometimes what we're looking for has been right in front of us the whole time. I also had Chinese food last night, and I read that on my fortune cookie. Hylia 2 was a beautiful planet. If I ever did retire as a space captain, this is the kind of place I'd want to settle down on. Although the wildlife were, something I could do without. But strangely, it was as if they had all been waiting for me. I thought we were gonna find something more, like a new power or some sort of like spaceship or a powerful weapon, but no, it was just a map taking us to another location. I guess Unity just means your princess is in another castle. But arriving there, we found the Hunter. Again. But this time he was with another Starborn called the Emissary. And they'd been discussing me, apparently. And I was now invited to speak with them aboard the ship. I was a little unsure on how this would go over, but this was an opportunity to learn things, and I didn't want to let that slip by. And boy, did we learn things. There are limitless other versions of our universe, and in each version, Starborn fight over the artifacts to find unity. The Hunter is a Keeper Aquila from another universe, and the Emissary is Sarah from another. And from all the universes that they've seen, this is the first one where I've made it this far, and they now want me to help them. Other Sarah believes we should stop Starborn from traveling the universes and collecting powers, while other Aquila believes that whoever gets them, gets them. They gave me some time to think about it, and the Emissary gave me the location and key to a place on Luna, Earth's moon. She said that I should probably check that out, so I decided to head there before talking to everyone back at the lodge. And I found myself at a base operated back when NASA was still a thing. From the logs I found, they were building some sort of supercomputer that was supposed to be installed on a ship that was being built at the same time. But strangely, it was all being built off the data from something the higher-ups at NASA weren't willing to share. And again, I was being followed. What remained of NASA was in ruins. Which, to be honest, from how long ago Earth was abandoned, I'm pretty surprised most of our technology and clutter was pretty much still the same. But down the elevator and inside the lab was pretty cool. Old spaceships, landers, satellites, it's hard to imagine half this stuff even working. And then deeper underground the facility, I found an area heavily protected with the same kind of security you'd expect to find everywhere out here today. But then from the audio file that I found and listened to, it's as if someone with the knowledge we have now went back in time. Was Victor Isa from the recordings a Starborn? From the documents deeper in, we learned that what destroyed the Earth was the gravity drives. Every jump that was made slowly took some of Earth's atmosphere with it until there wasn't enough for it to sustain itself. But I don't quite get the lesson that the Emissary wanted me to learn from all of this. When Victor found the artifact, it just gave him extra knowledge. I mean, when I found them, it just showed me stars in a galaxy. So I'm sure everybody sees different things. Maybe everybody's experiences with them are different. I mean, I definitely see that some people use it for bad things, but we've used ours for good, right? I mean, we've helped people, but I knew what I needed to do. The Hunter wanted total freedom without any consequences for action, and the Emissary wanted to make decisions for all based on their own arbitrary values. So, I chose neither. I met everyone at the lodge first to tell them what had happened. They had a hard time believing at first, the idea of the multiverse. Can't say I blame them. I don't think any of them have seen the Avengers. And then I was off to Freya 3, a temperate rocky planet further out than anywhere we'd been before. But before we could get there, a research satellite had sent out a distress call. Something about an explosion and being overrun, which the planet itself was beautiful. And from first appearance, the facility looked like the kind of place I'd want a vacation to. But yeah, no, that I was wrong. Going inside, nobody had sent out a distress signal, nor had any ships been picked up since their last supply drop. But when I mentioned something about an explosion I heard from the distress call, they brought me in to go see the director. Suddenly I found myself in the middle of what seemed like a horror film. Creatures burst from the ground and I fired back at them, and then suddenly I was back. The guy seemed just as confused as I was, saying I'd disappeared. We continued on our way to the director, and then it happened again. And that's when I met Raph, the man who sent the distress signal. Or was I hallucinating things? Was I on drugs? Raph told me that 3 months ago he sent out a distress call, that they were experimenting on something, and from his description I believed was an artifact. But before I could think much else about it, I was back. I kept jumping back and forth and not really sure how to go about doing things until I bumped into Ethan. I told him about the scorpion things, and then he told me about an experimental weapon, which I in the moment I almost used the Nero app to get it from him, but we're better than that, right? I don't really get how it worked, nor do I even want to try and comprehend it. But it turns out I wasn't jumping randomly, I was just walking into these and I just couldn't see them before. But eventually I made it to the probe and I had two choices. Shut it off here where I had started or over in that universe. Although really I don't know which universe I started in. Did I start in the universe where I got the distress signal, or did that get sent through the time where... Oh god, I might have screwed this up. Sorry, Ethan, rest in peace. But either way, I got the artifact and a new gun, which was nice. Next was Augur. The I'd picked up something from an old abandoned mine, but when we got there, Ecliptic had made the place home. However, with my new fancy toy, it easily made work of them. And from there, I collected the final artifact. We now had all of them. From there, it was a quick jump back to our totally state-of-the-art facility where I left the artifacts on that spinny thingy in the stairwell because nothing else was big enough to put the thing inside. And I wasn't gonna leave it outside because then it was easier to steal. But is that it? Just does nothing? So we jumped out to where we were supposed to meet the two Starborn and we fought to the death. I almost took out one of them before they warped away, but then I was shot down by the other, and so ends the tale of how I died. The end. I'm just kidding. I kicked their butts and made my way to the temple. By the time I got down there, the Starborn had already wiped out the Ecliptic, so thank you for that. But maybe I would have preferred fighting the Ecliptic because the Starborn, oh god, they're just annoying, especially when there's a large group of them. And I thought the Ecliptic were done and over with, but somehow a Starborn had the power to revive them? What kind of powers are these and why haven't I gotten them? God, this place was like a maze trying to navigate through it. Until I ran through a something and found myself in a cave talking to Lynn. I hadn't taken any Aurora in a while. I thought I beat it, but I must be relapsing. So I just did the only thing I knew how to do in that moment, and I fought a lot of stuff. There was a lot of shooting, a lot of dying. Thankfully, none of the dying was me. And during this process, anomalies kept taking me to all sorts of different places. But at this point, I couldn't tell what was real or not. But there it was. The resting place of the final artifact. I was also terrified of the battle I was being prepared for here. I've never seen this much ammunition before in my life, which I'm glad I got because the cavern leading up to the artifact room was suddenly full of duplicates of myself. I ignored them the best I could and chased down Fionn, and after finally finishing her off, all of the duplicates disappeared. Honestly, they were more terrifying and powerful than she was. I think it was a she? They were? Within the final artifact room, I was once again face to face with the hunter and the emissary. I tried to talk them out of killing each other, but I couldn't sway them either way. They were both pretty stubborn. God, I don't know how long our battle went on for. I kept killing them one after another, but somehow they kept pulling us through anomaly after anomaly. I think into all sorts of other different universes. There were a few close moments, but I eventually prevailed over them. And with that, the final artifact was mine. It was all over. If they could travel between all these different dimensions so easily, why didn't they just go to another dimension where the other one wasn't there and then get everything they needed and then, I don't get it. I don't know. Making it back to the ship, everyone seemed pretty excited about the prospect of unity. On the other hand, I was a little nervous and I wasn't so sure about it. We'd done so many things here. We'd met so many different people. We'd changed so many different lives, and now we were just preparing to leave it all behind. Also, I don't understand how Bethesda gives us the option to build this on the station or build it on the ship, but at the end, they just pretend you never built it on a station. They just pretend it was always a part of your ship. Seems like a pretty big oversight. And with that, our last final moments here.
Hey, Captain. Need help with anything?
Yeah, how do I just power up the gravity drive? Because that's what I'm supposed to do for my quest right now, and I can't figure it out. There are no buttons for it. How do you just power up the gravity drive? Did Bethesda never plan for anybody to beat this game? Bethesda, how are we supposed to figure that out? There's no power up the grav drive button. Turns out you just jump to some random place. I don't understand. Did they never expect anybody to make it this far in the game? I'm just a little salty right now that I spent 9 hours building that base, and it meant nothing. Can I also just quickly say that we were given the option to build it on a base or on the ship, and we were told that if we built it on the ship, we were likely to be attacked, but if we built it on a station, the station was likely to be attacked, but the station was never attacked and I never got any notifications I needed to defend it, so what was the point of even doing any of that? And apparently powering up the gravity drive means just pick any location, anywhere within the universe, and then you're not gonna go there, you'll go to Unity instead. What if I didn't want to go to Unity yet? What if I wanted to do something else before powering up the grav drive? Right, okay, focus, we're almost there. Unity wasn't what I expected it to be, and as I stood there listening to what us had to say, I realized I already knew what it was that I wanted to do. In fact, I think I'd already decided this a long time ago. I wanted to break the universe's cycle. What's immortality if it makes everything you've ever done meaningless? So no, I would not go to Unity. Oh shit, this is not good!